Welcome to the Arizona Supported Decision Making presentation. This one is for people with disabilities and their supports. Today's presenters will include myself, George Garcia, and Juliana Cureña, and we are both with Southwest Institute for Families and Children. I suppose I should turn on my video. There I am. Okay. Well, I will start this off by talking about guardianship. So before we actually talk about supported decision making, we're first going to talk about guardianship. Now, I know that we have some people here that are from other states. So these are specifically about guardianship rules in Arizona, but they tend to be federal rules. So they tend to be the same in most states. But with that said, if you do have any questions about guardianship, please feel free to contact your local protection and advocacy office, and they will guide you in the right direction as to what does guardianship mean in your state. Okay. So before we start talking about guardianship, we'd like to talk about a quote by a former United States Senator. His name was Claude Pepper. So you can see we have a picture of Claude Pepper in our presentation. He is a black and white picture of a middle-aged man with glasses, and he's wearing a suit. And the quote that he said about guardianship, he said, "The typical ward," now a ward is a person under guardianship, "has fewer rights than the typical convicted felon. By appointing a guardian, the court entrusts to someone else the power to choose where they will live, what medical treatment they will get, and in rare cases, when they will die. It is, in one short sentence, the most punitive civil penalty that can be levied against an American citizen." Now that is a very drastic quote. That is very powerful. And I want to say that we are not saying that guardianship is bad. In some cases, guardianship is necessary for some people. But what we are saying here today is that it's not necessary for everyone. And not everyone with a disability needs to be placed under guardianship. So we're going to talk about what is guardianship, and then we're going to talk about supported decision making. Okay, is this the right presentation? Yeah. All right. So we're going to be talking about the history of guardianship, guardianship basics, guardianship findings, and considering alternatives. All right. As I said, guardianship varies by state. In Arizona, a guardian is a guardian of an individual or a person, and a conservator is a guardian of the estate. So in Arizona, there's a difference. A guardian is for a person, and a conservator is more about the finances or any properties that that individual may have. And Native American tribes have their own guardian tribal laws and their own courts. So as Claude Pepper said in his quote, there's a lot of things that are at stake when someone comes up to guardianship. The guardian, depending on the level of guardianship, a guardian has all the power over a person. They can decide where they live. They can make all the medical decisions, so they can decide whether that person goes to a doctor or whether or not they take the medicine or have any medical treatments. A person who is under full guardianship loses their right to vote. So they're no longer able to vote. all financial decisions are made by the guardian, including if that person with the disability wants to be employed, wants to work. If the guardian chooses that that person does not have the ability to work or the right to work, then the guardian decides that they don't work. And then also relationships. A guardian has control over who that person is allowed to see, or if they develop any relationships. So as you can see, it's pretty drastic here. So how does one go about getting guardianship? Well, the process starts with a petition. A petition is a document that can be filed with the courts, and you basically let the courts know that you want to have guardianship over a person. And that person is given notice. So they're being told, they get told that, hey, somebody is filing for guardianship over you. And an attorney is given to that individual to represent that attorney. The person who is applying for guardianship, the guardian, must provide proof that this person needs guardianship. So that often means that they have to go to the doctor of that individual, and the doctor must sign off and say, yes, this person is not able to make decisions for themselves. They're not able to take care of themselves, and they would benefit from a guardian. All that is evidence that then gets submitted to the courts, and then the courts will look at it and determine whether or not that person needs a guardian. If the court decides that yes, that person needs a guardian, they will be placed under the care of the guardian, and that person becomes a ward of that guardian. That person with the disability is able to challenge it in court. If they do not want a guardian, they can provide their own evidence as to why they do not need a guardian, and all of that is taken into consideration by the judge. And then they make a determination. Now, there are different levels of guardianship, and some of them are very restrictive and some of them are not so much restrictive. And so the first level, or the most drastic or the most restrictive, is full guardianship. And that is where the person has no rights whatsoever. The next option is limited guardianship. And limited guardianship just means that the person is able to keep some of their rights, but the guardian has control over other parts of their lives. So for example, a person with a disability who has guardianship or is being placed under guardianship may maintain the rights to vote, because voting is important to that person. And when they apply for guardianship, they let the judge know that this person wants to keep their right to vote. And if the judge sees that that person is able to understand what voting is and how to vote, then the judge may say, yes, they do maintain their right to vote. And that happens for all sorts of other things. So for instance, if they're able to make their own healthcare decisions or their own financial decisions, as long as they can prove to the judge that they are able to do this, then they may get those rights. And so then you get limited guardianship. There are other less restrictive options also. There are alternatives like powers of attorney, or a healthcare powers of attorney, or rep payees. And that gives some rights to a person that person chooses to have represent them. And then finally, the less restrictive alternative, or the less restrictive option, is supported decision making. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So as you can see, we have less restrictive supported decision making, and then most restrictive would be guardianship. So what does guardianship look like after a court order? Well, a guardian has certain responsibilities or certain duties, and they must find the most appropriate and least restrictive setting for the ward. So they have to make sure that this person is in a living situation that's appropriate for that person, is safe, and gives that person as much rights as they are able to do or freedoms as they're able to handle. They must make reasonable efforts to secure appropriate medical and psychological care. So they have to make sure that this person is receiving the medical attention that they need. They must make sure that that person is receiving the training and education that they're able to handle, that they're able to understand and use. And a guardian must take the individual's values and wishes into consideration. Now, that key word right there is consideration. You know, you may, if you have a guardian, you may tell the guardian what you need or what you wish to happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the guardian is going to do it, because ultimately it's the guardian's decision, but they just must take it into consideration. And they also must file annual reports, letting the courts know how things are going and the condition of the individual and the estate. So if they have any money or if they have any finances, they must let the courts know. All right. So when you start thinking about, well, some of the alternatives, what some of the things you must consider is that guardianship can be a very quick process that has long-term consequences. You know, it's relatively easy to get guardianship of an individual if, you know, all it is that if all it means is going to the courts and filing paperwork. But undoing guardianship can be very difficult. The courts don't like to say that they were wrong. So if you file for guardianship and the courts grant guardianship, then you come around back and say, you know what? I don't want guardianship anymore. The courts are going to go, well, you showed evidence that you needed guardianship, and what has changed to say that you no longer need it? So you have to prove that you no longer need guardianship in order to have it undone. So that, you know, for instance, the term is incapacitated. You have to show that the person is no longer incapacitated. So it's a very difficult process. I have a question in the chat that says, what does it mean to ward in old terms? All right, so the courts call the person that is with a disability that's being placed under guardianship, they call that person the ward. So the guardian is the person that's going to be taking care of the person with the disability. And then you have the ward, which would be the person with the disability. And that's just the language that the courts use. Okay. Juliana, you want to take this one?
So now we're going to talk about what is supported decision making. And we talk about everyone makes choices every day. They make choices of what they're going to wear, what they're going to eat, what they're going to do for the day, for the week. And so that's what everybody should be able to do, is make choices. And then sometimes if we may need help, sometimes some of those choices are hard to think about. And that's where supported decision comes in place. We're asking for help. And it can include, as I mentioned, what are you going to wear to that party that you are invited to? What are we going to have for dinner? What kind of car did you want to buy? You know, there's millions of cars choices. How about buying a house? You know, you want a big house, a little house? There's people who can help you with those. And there's so many other choices in life. But making decisions can be a big responsibility. And sometimes those big responsibilities may need somebody to help you make good choices. Decision making also helps people with disabilities keep their rights as adults. It offers guidance and assistance from people they trust. It also creates a formal network of people who are going to volunteer and help the person with a disability make decisions and life choices. And now we're going to talk about deciding supported decision making is right for you.
So as Juliana mentioned, supported decision making basically means someone developing a network around an individual who may need some support or some help to make decisions for themselves. So how do you know if this one's right for you? Let me go next. So supported decision making is all about receiving the right support at the right time to live as independently as possible. That means that you want to be as independent as you can. So in order to be able to live that independent life, you receive the support you need to help you make the right choices. And remember, supported decision making involves a person with a disability making choices for themselves. In supported decision making, you keep your rights, so you make your own choices. Of course, you make those choices by receiving the proper type of support, the type of support that you need. Everyone is different. But remember, what works for some people may not work for others. So everyone is different when it comes to supported decision making. If you're thinking about using supported decision making, there are some things that you will need to be able to do in order to use supported decision making. Some of the things that you're going to have to be able to do is communicate what your wants and needs are. Can you let people know what you want or what you need? You have to be able to make decisions for yourself. And you may have to learn from your mistakes. Nobody's perfect and not everybody makes the right choices all of the time. But that's why we learn from our mistakes. So ask yourself this: given the right support, so given the right help that you may need, can that person with the disability make decisions for themselves? And if the answer is yes, then supported decision may be something that you can use. But planning is essential. Pavlina, you have a question?
Well, yeah. So if we make a right decision, how is it related to make it a right choice? Because sometimes when we have decision, how do you make a right decision with a right choice?
That's a very good question. And there's no guarantee that you're going to make the right decision. Nobody is ever guaranteed that in life. But what's good about supported decision making is that your supporter is going to explain to you your options. They're going to give you the help that you need, how you need it, so that you understand what are your choices, what are the consequences. If I choose this, what's going to happen? If I choose that, what's going to happen? And so you know exactly what's going to happen when you make your decision. But nothing's guaranteed in life, right? So when you start thinking about supported decision making, you're going to be thinking, well, how do I use it and where do I use it? And we all have different things in our lives that we have to deal with, right? We have to make decisions about finances, our money. You know, how do we spend our money? Do we have to pay bills? How do we budget? We might have to make decisions about employment, education, transportation, voting, housing, healthcare. There's a long list of things that we may need help with. And so these are all the things that you're going to have to think about when thinking, can I use supported decision making? And if yes, where in my life do I need the help so that I can make right decisions and live as independent as possible? Planning is not a one-person job. So if you're thinking about using supported decision making and you're going to start planning for it, you know, you might want to develop a team that's going to help you make that plan, right? And you can involve anybody that you want to be part of your planning team. You might have family members, caregivers, you know, friends, teachers, religious leaders, coaches, employment specialists or counselors, healthcare professionals, anybody in your life that you feel comfortable and you trust, they can help you say, okay, we're going to use supported decision making. How is this going to work for me? And they can help you plan. Everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. I may need more support than you do, or you may need more support than I do. So everybody's plan is different. But one of the things that we like to do is we like to create a chart. And as you can see on the screen, we have a chart with two columns. And the column on the left is areas of support. And the column on the right is how I would like support. So what we do is we start thinking about, where in my life do I need support? Well, I'm going to need support in finance, and I'm going to need support in medical decisions, and I'm going to need support in employment. All right. And so you start thinking about all these different things. And then you say, well, how do I need support? Well, in finance, I may need somebody to assist me with making sure that I pay my bills on time. You know, helping me fill out those checks and mailing it in, or going online, or doing what I need to do to make sure I pay my bills on time. Or I may need somebody to help go with me to the bank, right? Taking me to the bank, so make sure that I'm managing my bank account correctly. And then in the medical area, I may need help with, going with me to the doctor's appointments. Making sure that they understand what I'm saying, or helping me understand what the doctor is saying, because maybe they use big words and I get nervous. So I need somebody to help me explain to me, what does the doctor say? Or employment, assist me with finding jobs. So everybody's different. Everybody needs different help in different ways. So you have to start thinking about this and listing, how do you want your job help assistance with supported decision making? Now, we do have these charts and the curriculum that we use of supported decision making on our website. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can access these charts that you can fill out on your own. So when you're planning, always remember, the person with the disability is the ultimate decision maker. You know, when you're deciding, you know, how do I want assistance? You're the one that's going to decide. You're the one in charge. Supporters are there only to provide support. They do not make decisions for you. And if you're going to choose supported decision making, you must have the ability to communicate your needs. Let people know what you wish, what you desire, you know, and you can do it in any way, whether you're able to speak or you're not able to speak and use augmentative equipment, then whatever it takes, but you must be able to communicate. And then life is complex and it varies. So, you know, there's going to be different areas of your life in which you may need supported decision making. So think about all those different areas of your life and take your time when you start planning this, because the more you take your time and the more you think about it, the better the outcome will be. All right, Juliana.
So now we're going to talk about choosing the right support person. And so there's many ways to support somebody with a disability, and the supporter should be someone that you trust. Supporters may be asked to assist people in areas that are very personal. So let's say you're going to the doctor. The supporter is going to hear everything that you tell the doctor. And so you want to make sure that it's information you want them to know as well. The person should feel safe and know that they can trust the supporter with personal information. And again, another example would be going to the bank with you and, you know, knowing how much money you have in your account. Do you trust that person to make sure they know and you know how much you have in your account? Supporters should have knowledge. So when you're looking for supporters, you want to find somebody who has experience in that area, making sure that that person, if they're going to help you at the bank, do they know how to manage money? And supporters should not be biased. So supporters should not provide advice or support based on how they will benefit. You should make sure that they understand that up front and letting them know that they're volunteering their time to support you. And how about this? You can have more than one supporter. More supporters prevent people from feeling overwhelmed. So if you have multiple supporters, they can help you in different areas. And having multiple supporters, you have many people keeping an eye on you and making sure that people aren't taking advantage of you and preventing abuse and fraud because more people are watching. You can change your support person, so you don't have to have that person with you forever and ever. Support decision-making agreements are revocable. So the supporter and the person both can decide if they want to end or change the agreement at any time. So one of the things, as people are looking at the areas of support that they need, think about the different people that can support you. And one way is to create a chart and to keep track of possible choices. Identify possible supporters, their areas of support, and how they will be helping you. And here's an example of how you can put all that together. So you have 3 columns. In the first column on the top, you have supporter, so the name of the person. The second column, you have area of support, so which area, what they're going to help you with. And then the third column is how would I like them to support me? So for example, we have Charlie Patton, who's a supporter, and they're going to help the person with finances. And George had mentioned a way that they can support the person is maybe assisting them with paying their bills. And so this is a great way to have a list of people and how they're going to support you. So the next one is asking someone to be your supporter.
So, as Juliana mentioned, supported decision-making involves supporters. These are the people that are going to help you live an independent life. And they agree to be there for you as a supporter. Now, you've made a list of possible supporters. You've thought about the areas in which you need help and how you would like that help. But now you got to ask that person, if they're willing to be your supporter. Do they want to enter into that working relationship with you? Now, that's a big ask for some people. That's a big, big responsibility. So when you start looking for possible supporters and you start thinking about, asking them if they want to be a supporter, you need to have a conversation with them. You need to talk to them about supported decision-making. Now, this is going to be one of the most important conversations that you're going to have with that person. In fact, it may take multiple conversations before you agree to work together. So when you start talking to them about supported decision-making, you need to be upfront about what is expected from each other, what you're going to need from them, and what you are responsible for. Supported decision-making may be a new idea for them, right? They may not even know what it is. So you have to explain it to them and let them know that supported decision-making is them supporting you so that you can live an independent life. You make your own decisions. They're only there to help you. Explain to them the differences between supported decision-making and something like guardianship, where the guardian makes all the decisions. In supported decision-making, you maintain your rights to make your own decisions. If they agree to that, they understand it, and they agree with that idea, then maybe it'll work as a good working relationship. But if they don't agree with it, they think that people with disabilities are not able to make their own decisions, then maybe this is not going to be a good fit. And you might need to look for someone else to be a supporter. Talk to them about the role of the supporter. You have to be clear and direct about the type of assistance that's needed from them, right? How are they going to provide support so that you can live an independent life? What kind of support do you need from them? Now, things may change in the future, especially as you work together or as a person with a disability, you become more independent, understanding more about how to make your own decisions and needing less support. All of that may change over time, but it's important to be upfront about what you need right now so that they know what they're getting into. You also have to be upfront about what is the role of the person with the disability? What are their responsibilities? In supported decision-making, people with disabilities take responsibility for their own lives. right? You make your own decisions. You're responsible for those decisions, whether they're good consequences or bad consequences. People with disabilities make all the decisions. Supporters there are only there to provide assistance in any way that person needs, but the supporter does not make decisions for that person. So now we're going to talk about that supported decision-making agreement. You want me to take it, Juliana?
All right. So some states have this and some states are still working on it. But in Arizona, we have agreement forms and supported decision-making agreement forms is an arrangement between two people. So the person with a disability and each supporter. In that agreement, it has a description and of the responsibilities for each party, each person, and explains the supporter's rights. It's a document that can help inform other people when you go to receive services such as going to the doctor or going to the bank about this relationship you have with the support person. So in the supported decision-making agreement, it's in writing exactly what the person with the disability expects from that support person. The agreement protects the privacy of a person with a disability by defining, again, what the information the supporter is allowed to receive. And as mentioned before, it lets the providers, like doctors and lawyers and support coordinators, know that supporters can participate in appointments and decision-making, but the person with a disability has all the decisions. In this support decision-making agreement, we have it's sectioned out, and we have the appointment of a supporter, the date of the agreement, and then the consent of the supporter saying that they're going to support the person with a disability. And in Arizona, we request that we need a signature that is notarized. And here's an example of a supported decision-making agreement here in Arizona. So there's 3 columns on this slide. And the first one, as mentioned before, talks about the appointment. The second section is the dates and the signatures. And the third part is the notary. And as you can see, the person with a disability is saying that, yes, I would like, and then on the second section right here, that the person is going to help them. And each support decision-making agreement is individualized. So these bottom sections can be different. And the choices are yes and no. So that person that is going to support is going to know that what they're going to help the person with a disability with. And then this section talks about that the person who's supporting is not allowed to make decisions for the person with a disability, but they're going to help them make decisions. And this is going to list what type of access they have in helping that person with a disability make decisions. And then there's 2 sections on the bottom here, and it's part of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act from 1996 that allows people to have health information. And then the second one, if you're getting supports in education, there's another law called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Acts of 1974. So those will be circled on which axis the person with the disability and the supporter have agreed on. And this is where you would sign the date that the decision-making agreement would be started. And this is where both people will sign. So the supporter would sign and they would print out their name. And then on this part, the person with the disability signs. And there's the signature sections, which also include needing some witnesses to sign that saying that you were able to fill this out on your own. And then the notary will sign the bottom part. So again, support decision-making agreements let everyone know what is expected. It helps protect people with disabilities as well as supporters. It tells doctors, lawyers, and other service providers that you're getting support to help you make your own decisions. And finally, it can be modified or terminated at any time.
So as Juliana mentioned, supported decision-making agreements are there to make a working relationship between the person with the disability and their supporter into a formal working relationship. But one of the key differences between guardianship and supported decision-making is that supported decision-making does not require you to go to the courts. So these agreements, even though they're formal, and even though you sign them and you write on there what kind of support your supporter is going to be providing, and we do get them notarized, they don't need to be filed with the courts, and there's no legal requirements, so they're not legally binding, right? But it's good so that you make this working relationship more formal. They agree to be there for you in any time that you need support in the area that you need support. And it lets people know, who the supporter is and why they're assisting you. So you can provide that to your doctor if you have a doctor's office that you go to, so that they know, who's there with you and how they're helping you, especially if you're needing help while going to the doctor. So that's supported decision-making so far. Does anybody have any questions? You can unmute yourself if you want, and you can ask questions. I see that Pavlina wrote, does it come down to choices? What do you mean by that?
So when we have decisions, and decisions could be also choice. So how does you make the right choice if you have a good decision, or if you have good decision? How do you know your choices are available? Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, like I mentioned before, nothing is guaranteed that you're going to make the right choice, but supporters are there to help you make those choices. So they're going to help you understand what are your options, what can you decide, and what are those consequences. So if you choose this, what's going to happen? If you choose that, what's going to happen? And supporters are there to help you. But the one thing that we do know about supported decision making is that the supporter that's there to help you is not going to make the decision for you. You have to make the decision that you feel like you need to make. But
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. George. when you say make your own decision, how do you know if you're using it correctly? And then will I be punished? Like when you say, I don't know what the punishment or the agreement or something. How do I be sure if I'm saying it correctly?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's no punishment to making the wrong decision.
Mm.
So, I mean, there
That's
are.
that's incorrect.
Yeah.
That's incorrect.
I'm just jumping in here for a minute. It's my understanding, and correct me please if I'm wrong here, that we did not pass supported decision-making in the state of Arizona. It is passed in the state of California and has been for a while, but we do
Okay.
not have a law here in the state of Arizona for supported decision-making. I believe there is a House Bill 2751 that is
Yeah.
still pending. That has not been approved.
Okay, so to your question or to your statement there, there is no law requiring supported decision making or a law that allows you to use supported decision making.
Okay.
Anybody can use supported decision making at any time. You do not need a law for it. But what that law was that what that law stated or that bill stated was that we wanted the judges or the courts to consider supported decision making as a less restrictive alternative to guardianship before making the decision to choose guardianship. So we wanted the courts to at least consider it first. And second, what we wanted to do is ensure that there would be no discrimination against people who use supported decision making. But legally, you can use supported decision making. There's nothing against using it. Just like I rely on my family to make, when I'm making decisions for myself that are huge, I'm going to consult my family, and I'm sure everyone else, as people that they trust that they can talk to whenever they have to make big decisions in their lives. So you can use supported decision making. There's nothing against the law that says
But-
you can't.
I don't think that was my point. My point is it's not legally binding, so it wouldn't hold up in a court of law, and you couldn't really hold that person accountable for not providing the proper supports to you, which is not true of guardianship. In limited guardianship, you can hold the person responsible.
Yeah.
So
And-
it's
and-
not that can be a tricky thing for people, especially if what the young lady the question that the young lady is asking of you, and I'm not sure if I'm interpreting her question correctly, is she may feel she needs a greater level of support in decision making at this point in her life, and that may not be her question at all. But let's just say that's a hypothetical. A person needs an increased level of support in making the decision. Ultimately, it can be their decision, but they need an increased level of support in making that decision beyond just a supportive person who does or does not have to be there, because there's no legally binding responsibility there for them to help you.
Okay, yeah, and to your point there. So yeah, there is no legal binding thing that says that person has to provide the right type of support. That's what makes supported decision making great. Is it if that person feels that they're not receiving the right type of support, they can change whoever they have as a supporter to anybody else that they feel is going to be best providing them the support that they need. And vice versa, if that supporter feels that they can no longer provide the support that person needs because it's overwhelming, then they can choose not to work with that individual. Those supported decision-making agreements are not legally binding.
Okay.
Another, but another.
Okay, but just
But hold
I don't
on,
want,
hold on.
oh, I was gonna say.
No, but hold on. Let me talk a little bit more about supporters. So one of the good things about supported decision making is that you can have more than one supporter. Under guardianship, you may only have one or two guardians, right? But what's good about supported decision making is, let's say that I need support in 3 different areas of my life. I need support in finance, I need support in medical, and I need support in employment. I can have 3 different supporters helping me in 3 different areas of my life. And the benefit of that is that supporters under supported decision making, and if we did pass this law, which we're trying to get passed, they become court mandated reporters. But even if they're not court mandated reporters now, what's good about having multiple supporters in your life is that you have more eyes looking at you and taking care of you and making sure that things are right. So let's say, for instance, I am supporting somebody in the medical, right? And my job is to help them get to the doctor's office. And that may require, them to buy a bus pass or something. And I, as the medical supporter, notice that their bank account is drained. This is bad. This is not right. I, as a supporter, might go, there's a red flag here. Something's not right. And I can then, report that to authorities or whatever. So you have multiple people that are there that are going to help make sure and look out for this individual.
This was amazing.
And that's one of the benefits of having multiple supporters for supported decision making.
All right, I still raise the bar in the question that when I consulted one of the most prominent attorneys, special needs attorneys in the state right now, I was told that there is no supported decision-making choice at this time in the state of Arizona, that it would not be legally binding and therefore is not a good choice at this time. I don't know, that's all I can say to you. I'm not objecting to supported decision making, because once again, it is a law in California. It is a legally binding agreement in the state of California. And I know there are other states where it is, but it is not in Arizona. And there seems to be some question about whether it's a good idea. Is it really as supportive as you want it to be? Because anyone can make a circle of people that are going to be your decision support. Anyone can do that, right? You just said so. Anyone can do that. Anyone can draw up this agreement. It's like anybody can do that, but you can't hold any of those people accountable for the decisions that they've made. So I'm just throwing that out there only because I do think we should have, so just so you know, I do think we should have supported decision-making in Arizona. I believe that that's an important option and a really good choice. It's just,
Right.
I'd like to see it be legally binding and legal.
Well, ultimately, if you use supported decision making, you maintain your rights as an adult, and so your rights don't go to anybody. So even if you were in the state of California, and even if supported decision making is legally recognized, nobody is at fault for making bad decisions except for that person who made that decision, because they maintain their rights to make their own decisions. Just like if you make a bad decision on your own life now, that's nobody's responsibility but your own. So that's important when you consider supported decision making, is given the right support, are you able to make your own decisions?
So you're saying you don't see the need for the law?
I see a need for the law to make sure that the courts consider it. I see a law to make sure that people with disabilities are not discriminated for using it. I don't want doctors to say, I don't care what you have, supporting you, you have a disability and clearly do not need or are not able to make your own decisions, when maybe they are able to make the decisions that they on their own. It really does depend on the individual. Now, like I said, it really is a spectrum. So some people may need more support, and then you start thinking about things like powers of attorney or healthcare powers of attorney. And if you need even more support, you move into legal guardian or limited guardianship, and then ultimately full-time guardianship. But it really does depend on the individual. Michael, you have your hand up and you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to make a comment that, you know, we all use supported decision making in some sort of way. Sometimes we use it to help buy cars or to buy homes or things, and even if, you know, those with or without disabilities use it. Yes, you know, the law would help. We tried it here in Arkansas and it did not pass the first time, but sometimes you have to try and try and try again to educate. The truth is that, you know, that the judicial system is bent towards talking about trying to say you must put the person under guardianship. And I like the idea of saying that there's options. Here's an option. You don't have to do this. You don't have to put someone under guardianship. You can do the supported decision making and things. And I think that's what, if I understand right, that's what you agree with, George, and stuff. And
Right, you are correct.
we got to work on educating the court, the legal, the legislature, and in each state, and also the courts, and just say, hey, you know, consider it, you know, talking with people when they come before you for guardianship, say, here's an option. It may not be legally binding, but there's options that you can look at and stuff, you know, like, you know, to try to get the information out there, you know.
And
Thank you for letting me speak.
no, I thank you for sharing that. Ultimately, it really does depend on the individual. If they're able to make decisions for themselves, depending on the level of support that they need. There are some individuals where supported decision making will not work. Right? They're gonna need as much too much support or too much help that they will need guardianship, and that's okay. Or limited guardianship, and that's okay. But we also see that there's a lot of people who need who don't need guardianship and are placed under guardianship when, you know, they don't need it. And you know, sometimes parents are told that you need to put a child under guardianship, and because they don't know of alternatives, they do so, and, you know, they don't realize the consequences of those decisions.
Well, thank you for your excellent presentation.
I've got 30 seconds left. I will just add one more thing. There are added things that you can add to supported decision making. You can find that in the Legal Options Manual by Arizona Center for Disability Law. If you have any more questions about supported decision making, you can contact me and I will be happy to answer any of your questions. My name is George Garcia, g.garcia@swifamilies.org.